Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Neighborhood Conversations, where we invite amazing people who are doing amazing things in community. And we have our very own today from the TWC, Nina. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Welcome. I'm good. I'm good. Welcome to Neighborhood Conversations. It's such a pleasure. Nina, you started. When did you started this year at TWC, right?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
November 2022. And then, yeah, so it
Nice.
hasn't been a year
How
yet.
are you liking it so far?
Oh, amazing.
That's
So
good.
far, it's definitely been one of the most interesting, challenging sometimes, and
Yeah,
definitely some rewarding experience that I've had so far. So,
that's good. That's good. That's good. Nina, thank you so much for coming on once again. We know that you're doing an amazing work as an inclusion specialist. I think that's the word for the fund development area teamwork. And it's a project that you guys are working on. And I would love to learn more about like what's going on in that project and also in your role. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, sounds good. First of all, thank you so much for having me today.
yeah,
You know that I resisted this for a long time because this is a huge, any kind of public speaking is a huge step out of my comfort zone.
yeah.
But some people strongly encouraged me to do this as well as having you there. And I know you personally, so that
Yeah,
definitely reduces some of my anxiety here.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, let's see what we can get out of this.
yeah.
I'll just quickly introduce myself, I guess.
Hey, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Nina, as Templeton mentioned, and I work at TWC as an inclusion specialist and funding coordinator. I am originally from Tbilisi, Georgia, which is in Caucasus region, and I've been in Canada for a little over 2.5 years now. Still getting used to the weather.
Yeah,
I started my journey, yeah, as you mentioned, not even a year now, in November with TWC as a skills development accessibility supports coordinator. I'm
right.
still doing some parts of that role.
Yeah,
And I just recently moved to the inclusion specialist and funding coordinator role
yeah,
after Teamwork added an additional stream to the Opportunities Fund,
yeah,
which I guess I'll touch base on a little later.
yeah.
But yeah.
That that's amazing. And how? Tell us a little bit about the skills development program. I know people may not know about what that program entails. So can you share a little bit about it in a summary?
Sure, yeah. The
Yeah,
long story short, skills development, it's a federal program that is designed for people who would like to enhance their existing skills or
yeah,
learn new ones. And they basically, it's challenging for them to find the employment with their current skills. So it's the program helps them to pursue further education. Um, and the skills development accessibility support part, which I was coordinating, is about accommodating people with disabilities who are participating in skills development. There's a lot of words there, so it might get confusing. But as we know, people may experience barriers that
yeah.
are related to their disability when trying to pursue education, employment, and other aspects of life. So skill development accessibility supports are trying to breach that gap between accessibility and education for the disabled community.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And now you're connected to another opportunity for inclusion specialists. Tell us like what that program entail and what's going on there. Yeah, with the funding. Yeah,
Yeah, so this Opportunities Fund, actually, Teamwork has been facilitating Opportunities Fund for 26 years now, so since its inception, basically. And it's a fund provided by Government of Canada, designed to support persons with disabilities with their employment journey. So it's either starting from the hiring process or seeking employment to the advancement. So basically, the program's objective is to boost the economic participation and independence of persons with disabilities. And now in April, so the new funding came in April, but they announced it in June.
yeah.
So the government added 1.8 million to the funding,
Wow.
which was it was amazing news, and we were able, as a country, create more project opportunities, which what we did at Teamwork, we added an additional stream. So before that, we were mostly focusing on our clients and people seeking employment. And we were trying to help them address the barriers they were facing in their seeking, obtaining, or maintaining employment. And as you know, it's a two-way street to keep the employment and for the employment to be successful. So while you can assist the job seeker with their needs, it's also important for the employer to be on board. So with this new funding and the new project, we are trying to reach the employers now and assist them to become a little bit more disability confident, because what we see a lot is people are not sure what to do with people with disabilities in the workplace. They have a hard time imagining how a deaf person can be, work on a construction, or how. So a lot of times when people think disability, our mind goes straight to wheelchair users, and the signs for the disabled spot usually are created as a person in a wheelchair. So that kind of creates our mind around physical disability mostly. But as we know, disability is a huge spectrum of different attributes and abilities and characteristics that you won't even know the person is disabled unless they tell you so. Or some people might not know about themselves that they're disabled unless they learn something new about themselves and connect certain dots from their experiences, right? And a lot of times when we see employers looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, that's just numbers from the recent research I read, that only 4% consider accessibility in their DEI strategies.
Wow.
But when we start talking about inclusion, we can, and I might be jumping back and forth to different topics.
Go ahead.
And stop me if this doesn't make sense. But when we talk of inclusion, we know that it refers to a practice of creating an environment where everyone, all individuals, regardless of their backgrounds, their identity, their experiences, attributes, characteristics, anything, are empowered to participate fully in the community or in the society or where they're trying to participate, right? So, and when we talk about inclusion, we're trying to foster a sense of belonging there as well. However, when you look at the studies and you look at the data, you see that only 4% of employers consider accessibility as their inclusion plan. And then it's just asking, how can you be fully inclusive without including accessibility in your day-to-day life?
I look forward to my family's security in the future. That's the main goal as a father.
The empowerment from changing careers has really just made me want to get out of bed in the morning.
I'm looking forward to growing my business. So I want to hire people like I was hired. I want to give guys that chance.
Il me fera plaisir de continuer à travailler avec les immigrants francophones en Nouvelle-Écosse.
I am looking forward to the financial freedom that I never had before.
I love the word belonging. You said inclusion has so much ways. How do you define belonging? In your personal way, yeah.
That's a really good question, because again, we can Google search those terms. They are on everyone's mind right now. I need to do that DEI training. So everyone hears it, but I think everyone perceives it differently, and we know that belonging is human need, that it's something to makes us feel accepted and valued and connected to, again, the community we're participating in.
Right.
But due to so many different experiences that people come with, all the backgrounds, and those are, I usually don't like the word unique, but those experiences usually unique.
Yeah.
And belonging will be different for everyone.
Right.
For example, for me, belonging was at TWC. It's just, one of the questions I asked in my interview, I remember, was how open you are to questions. Because I know something about myself that I can be very straightforward person, and I might ask questions that people might not be comfortable answering at that point, and I wouldn't even realize that. So for me, being in the community and in the environment that people are open to hearing questions and telling me if I'm too much, that was very important for me. And that kind of environment I definitely found at Teamwork, and I do feel belong there because I know that I will be perceived with understanding, and people are open to my questions, people are open to my opinions there.
No, that's so important, and that's a good example of sharing what belonging means to you, and how you're belonging in different settings, and knowing if you fit in that space. And that the TWC is that space where they create those belonging of individuals to
Indeed.
create their spaces, which is really awesome. How's the project going? Where are you guys at in the phase of the project? Like, have you done a lot of research and like community consultations? Like, where are you guys at in this project?
So right now we're just in our pilot phase.
Okay.
So we do have 9 employers on board with some of their employees participating. So the project looks like this. We have self-paced modules, self-learning modules that are asynchronous, as well as webinars that are virtual.
Mm-hmm.
We did partner with an amazing organization, a Placemaking for G, to pursue this project. And so they created and designed the modules. And so while the objective of Opportunities Fund and this particular stream is around disability, the modules itself are designed to educate around DIBA and diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and accessibility, and which I find really interesting. Sometimes you would see DEI as one training, and then you would see accessibility as a different training. But again, those concepts should be brought together. They should be talked about in the same context. Again, you cannot have diversity, equity, inclusion without accessibility. So while I think that disability and accessibility should be discussed in large details, it should not be separated from the topic of DEI.
No, definitely not. Why don't you think that way? Why do you think that way?
Because when you talk about inclusion, and that's kind of a good question.
Yeah.
You're talking about inclusion, and today's practices often show that you're creating a project and you're trying to reach certain audience.
Yeah.
Right? And you're trying to implement certain supports or services. You're trying to create something new and to get funding for it. And this is just how the system works.
Yeah.
You're trying to navigate through all the complexities of today's life, and there is always a pressure to check certain boxes there.
Sure.
So when we're talking, so you're trying to meet a criteria, right? And the intention behind this is very relevant. So the intention behind most of the criteria is to, again, breach the inequalities and give voice to someone who would historically not have those voices.
Yeah.
And you would foster inclusivity in that way. And the innate concept of sticking to requirements
Yeah.
can result in unintentionally leaving someone behind.
Right.
So, for example, a lot of funding that supports that we do at TWC, the ones that we receive from the government, whether it's provincial or federal, people have to qualify and people have to meet certain criteria there.
Right.
However, as we know from a human perspective, if you don't meet that criteria, that you don't check the certain box, it doesn't mean that you need that support less than someone who qualifies.
No.
Because human experiences are, it's a little harder to show them on paper. So, and the tension between the need to check the box while with good intentions and holding that balance between offering inclusive support and maintaining necessary standards, I think is pretty large right now. And I think I'm going off the topic a little bit. But
No.
when we're talking inclusion, while we need to check certain boxes to receive certain support,
Yeah.
I think the reason why accessibility is often separate, because I think communities have a little lack of understanding about the concept at this point, and that's why you would see that disabled community is the most unemployed minority.
Yeah.
Due to that, while we know that some accommodations provided can totally turn somebody's employment journey around, we also know that it comes with a lot of stigma. It can come with a lot of misconceptions, attitudinal barriers, which later result in physical barriers that we usually perceive as the most known ones, and systematic barriers that goes to employment, for example. So when we remove accessibility from the DEI, people either will ignore it as something extra, or will look at it as something different, something that, I'll do it another time. This is too much. Yeah. I did this big training already. I don't have time for anything else.
Yeah.
So when you introduce a concept as a whole and you make the necessary connections, people will think of inclusion from, I would say, universal design perspective.
Yeah.
From the perspective that I need to include a person, not because ABC, but I need to include the person because I value them as a human being, and this is their background, and these are their needs.
Yeah. Wow. Nina, you've been so educated. I thank you so much for sharing so much, enlightening us about inclusion, but also the accessibility part, and seeing so much of how it's missed and how it needs to be connected is not an extra pill. It's something that's really, really important, and brings so much. Wow, you educated me today, which is really nice. And at the Neighborhood Conversations, we're always learning something new, and you brought a lot of different perspective. Before you go, I would love for you to share one quote, one word, one tip with our community on how they can continue to be more inclusive, and go from there. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but I can't just say one thing and just leave it at that. Yeah. But from the perspective of inclusion, I think it's very important we all be researchers at heart and just not be afraid to ask questions, not be afraid to show that we do not know something, because as you just said, we all learn something every day, and we should remove the stigma from asking the questions, from inquiring to something, because if I've never had an experience working with, animal rights activists or something, I would not know what they're doing. While I do agree that it's an important topic, I do not have deep understanding of it. I don't know what are the current issues, or I don't know what people are doing and what they're up to right now on that particular topic. And it's the same. So almost in everything, you don't need to be an expert in disability or accessibility to ask a question to your employer. How can I be a better employer? How can this workplace be better for you to thrive, and what can I do as an employer to support you in your work. And I think we need to remove that stigma from asking questions, first of all. And for the quote, that's my favorite quote of all for like a million of years now. And it's from a very old TV show. Maybe someone will recognize it who's watching, but I'm not going to say which one. And it said that we're all stories at the end, and just making a good one.
Oh,
so as long as you live your life with curiosity and with kindness, and at the end you will look back and say, I think my story was pretty good.
Wow.
I think this is what every person should keep in mind.
I like that. I like that.
Thank you.
I like that. I like that. And that's how we're going to end today's conversation. Nina, thank you so much for coming on to today's conversation. Your
Thank you for having me.
Yes, your words of advice and encouragement really hit on today. And we look forward to welcoming you back on another time to this conversation. But until then, we'll see everyone at the next episode. Have a good one.
This podcast is funded by the Government of Nova Scotia.